RFK Jr. recently stated that there is a lot of aborted fetal debris and DNA particles in the MMR vaccine. Now, this is demonstrably false, and the facts should be in the hands of the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. At a minimum, this is gross misinformation, and quite frankly, I find it irresponsible that a person in his position would make such comments. So let's talk about it. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. David Berger. I'm a board-certified pediatrician in Tampa, Florida, and my focus is on making healthy kids. Now, today we are going to be talking about some recent false statements that the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made when talking about the MMR vaccine. And in particular, the questions that have come up. Does the MMR vaccine contain fetal tissue? And can the DNA, for that matter, if so, be integrated into the human genome, which is something that I'm hearing people have concerns about. And not just since his statement, this has been ongoing concerns people have expressed. Now, while I do agree with most of the policy statements put forth by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., especially when it comes to the demand for clean food, clean water, clean air, minimizing exposure to toxins. I do strongly believe that neurodevelopmental and other chronic inflammatory and other conditions in children are being perpetuated and worsened by those types of toxic exposures, as well as a lack of certain nutrition. And there's a genetic component in terms of how a body deals with inflammation and nutrition as well. So these are real concerns. They do need to be studied, and I absolutely give my support in those endeavors. But in terms of this particular topic, okay, this is a misconception that fetal tissue is in the MMR vaccine. So let's be clear. It's not. It just is not, okay? But the rubella vaccine, it's the part of the virus. So MMR is measles, mumps, rubella. So the rubella part was, back in the 60s, grown in a human cell line called WI38, which originally was derived from fetal lung tissue. They were from 2 legal abortions, and that's where it came from over 50 years ago, about 50 years ago. But now, what's used in the vaccine are only what are called descendant cells. These are lab-grown cells. They have been maintained and unchanged for decades. There is no fetal tissue. There's no additional use in it. There's no fetal tissue being collected. It's not being handled. It's not being used whatsoever. So there is no fetal tissue in vaccines that kids are being given today for MMR. Now, as far as the other components of the MMR vaccine, the measles and the mumps, they're actually grown in chick embryo cells, not human cells. So that's the facts. Okay. Now, in terms of how the vaccine itself is made, so this WI38 cell line, it is providing a growth medium for the rubella virus. That's what it grows in. Okay, because viruses grow in cells, and especially human cells, for human viruses. Now, once the virus is propagated, once it is made, it's grown, the vaccine then does go very significant purification steps to remove the cellular material. Now, but that doesn't mean that it's completely free. And to be clear, there can be trace residuals, small amounts of RNA fragments, even proteins from the cells. They could remain. But here's the question: are they harmful? So in terms of the regulatory limits, which is checked for every year, the FDA does limit the amount of DNA in any vaccine to no more than 10 nanograms per dose. Furthermore, the World Health Organization also says that it cannot have fragments that are more than 200 base pairs in length. So to refresh you from biology, if you don't remember, in genetics, so our DNA, which is in that double spiral, once it opens up, so there's DNA and there's these base pairs, the A's and the T's and the G's and C's, and our cells open up in the nucleus. It opens up those the DNA, the base pairs, so that they're seen, and then they're read. The DNA is turned into messenger RNA. Messenger RNA is turned into proteins like enzymes or structural material for our body. Okay, but the actual amounts that's been found in it, because Mark does have, the manufacturer does need to report and study this on a regular basis, and the amounts that they're reporting, quite frankly, they're well below those limits. Actually, usually in the picogram amounts, and that's a trillionth of a gram smaller than nanograms. And these fragments themselves, they have been found they're not functional. They are degraded. They don't have biological activity. Okay, so now that we've established that, what about the concern? So let's say, for instance, that's all wrong, that there are actually bigger particles. Can that DNA from the virus then be, or from those aborted cells for that matter, I should say it's not DNA in the virus, in the vaccine, it's the cells. Can it be integrated into human DNA? Now, in reality, that would require 3 extremely unlikely events that are actually pretty implausible to happen. So, number 1, the DNA would have to enter into the cells. Okay, that doesn't happen because there is no delivery mechanism to move that vaccine particle into the cells. Now, you may remember differently was so for the COVID mRNA vaccine, because you may remember that they were the messenger RNA was packed in what are called lipid nanoparticles. Lipids are made to transfer into the cells. And so that would meet, and then the messenger RNA would be released into the cells. They would get there. And then that messenger RNA would be turned into the spike protein, which was then released, which is then what created the immune system response to provide immunity as the virus itself would. But of course, we know that people have had reactions to that. So but this mechanism, this does not exist in the MMR vaccine. But let's say that that's false. Then it would have to get into the nucleus, which again, there's no passing along, there's no transportation mechanism for that to happen either. Okay, so, and it's not in the vaccine, so it doesn't really happen that way. It doesn't. Now, the other thing is that it would then have to be integrated into the person's DNA itself. Okay, and that requires very specific enzymes called integrase. That's an example of one, and that's not in the vaccine either. Now, again, it doesn't mean that can't happen with some viruses. In fact, with HIV, that's what it does. The reverse transcriptase turns it back into the DNA, which can be incorporated, but that's not happening here with the MMR. Okay. In addition to that, the human cells are equipped with special enzymes to rapidly degrade any foreign DNA, especially fragments this small. And let's face it, we are exposed to foreign DNA every single time we eat, assuming you're eating real food, because it's in vegetables, fruits, meats, proteins, nuts, seeds. It's in all of that. So we are exposed every day to foreign DNA. So overall, what's my take? So this WI cell line, while it was originally derived from fetal tissue over 50 years ago, it's not in it. And no child who received an MMR vaccine is receiving any foreign fetal tissue. It's just not happening, okay? So again, the product itself is purified and breaking down these trace fragments that could be in there. And again, there's no biological mechanism to even get it into the cells in the first place. Now, misinformation does thrive when we oversimplify things. And it's so important to be clear, to be transparent and precise, to help families make the best informed choices. And that's why I make these videos. It's for you guys so that you have the information and hopefully you find me a trustworthy source. Now, let's be clear though. That's not to say that vaccine reactions don't happen, and reactions do happen to the MMR vaccine. I personally have 3 patients who had significant reactions to the MMR vaccine. One was an anaphylactic type of reaction right afterwards, but was fine within a few hours after taking Benadryl. But 2 of them were kids whose parents thought that they were that there was a regression after the MMR. Now, through detoxification, diet, development, education, these were kids that were ready to start school again, and then went to their local doctor and received a second MMR vaccine. Both of these kids regressed the second time into autism. So that would be a hard sell for that to be a coincidence, because it was several years later. So it does happen, but this particular concern that's raised by RFK Jr. and others, that's just not a thing. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, that you find information there. If you do, please subscribe to the channel. Please share it with others. We want to get this information out there. And also, please leave a respectful comment down below. If you agree, if you don't agree, that's fine. I really do welcome lots of discussion, but you have to keep it kind. Have a nice day.